Welcome to Study Session 2, the Journalistic Process Introduction. In the previous study session, we look at the meaning of journalism and trace the evolution of journalism as a profession. Our explanation of journalism shows that the profession involves some activities that a professional journalist must carry systematically before he can bring the news to the public realm through the appropriate mass media. These activities are described as a journalistic process because they are performed in a logical sequence. In this study session 2, we shall discuss the journalistic process, which includes information gathering, preparation of the story, writing the story, and production. Learning outcomes. After you have studied this study session, we should be able to write a news report going through the stages of journalistic process. Stages of journalistic process. Professional journalists have the basic task objectives of reaching mass audience with factual, accurate, and unbiased information that is easily understood. To do this effectively requires the journalist to apply several professional skills and activities which are usually woven into a multi-stage process called the journalistic process. The journalistic process contains 4 different parts. Stages. Information gathering. This is the first stage of news writing procedures. Allo and Osifesto, 2009. This stage requires the journalist to make observation, conduct interview, make research, and embark on report finding. The journalist should go out to scout for news. The reporter can get the raw material, that is the information, for his news stories by visiting his regular beats, by following newsworthy events anywhere they happen, through interviewing, or by bumping into an unexpected event, accidental reporting. News events do not just happen. People make news. This is about people. News affects people. An event that makes news must have a specific venue and time of occurrence. All these are the core variables that guide a journalist and lead him to get a newsworthy story. The journalist should understand that source of news are either human or physical, that is non-human. Therefore, the journalist should visit the right venue at the right time, consult the appropriate human sources, examine and read relevant material, physical sources that will provide a rich background for his story. Reporters can obtain information from their human sources by face-to-face interview, by telephone conversation, or by any other means. Before the reporter goes out to gather information, he has to ask himself 3 basic questions. Those questions, as explained by Agbese, 2008, are: what and why? That is, what am I looking for? Why am I doing this story? What information exists on the story? That is there any background information on the story that will take the audience get nearer to the truth? What weight does the story carry? That is, what personalities are involved? What impact or consequence does the story have on or for the mass audience? Does the story contain some dramatic angles beyond mere statistics? When this question guides the reporter in his quest to gather information, he is bound to get the raw materials that will produce interesting news stories. 2. Preparation of the story. The piece of information the journalist has collected remain a jumble of trash until they are well processed and refined into a finished product. News story. This is the stage where grains are separated from the husk. Here, the journalist, that is the reporter, checks his facts and figures, sift the facts from the less relevant details, verifies information to ensure accuracy, and plots the structure of the story. This stage deserves an intense weighing and a critical analysis of every bit of the body of information gathered. The reporter deploys his routine experience and reportorial craft to discern facts from public relations information that have no real impact or significance for the public than to serve the selfish interest of some people or a group. He also decides from which angle to approach the story. Does he use a WHO lead or a WHAT lead? Does he write the story as a hard news or as a soft news feature? Or he complements the soft news with a feature story? Which quotations are most striking and relevant to accurately tell the story? All these decisions are fundamental at this stage before embarking on the actual writing of the story. Writing the story. At this stage, the reporter writes his story in a style that is interesting, clear, lucid, unambiguous, and succinct, and in a format that conforms to the peculiarity of media type for which the story is being written for publication or broadcast. News designed for electronic media is different from that of the print media. Radio news has a format that is different from television news, while newspaper stories are distinct from magazine news stories. In fact, the house style of a media outfit will be different from another. At the stage of writing, the reporter must always remember that he is always working under the deadly tyranny of deadline. Time is never sufficient, and it does not wait for anybody, including the reporter. Therefore, the reporter must be very fast at writing. As he writes, he edits and proofreads because he does not have the luxury of time to come back at a later time to edit his work. The reporter writes news stories basically to inform but not to impress, as Duyele 2005-13 put it. Any newspaper reporter who does not understand the principle of simplicity in news writing is not communicating. Is writing above his audience frame of reference. The principle of simplicity also calls for block paragraphing, where the reporter presents the news story in simple, short and clear paragraphs. However, while writing features, the reporter is at liberty to vary his style in such a manner to inform, educate, and entertain the audience. But this should not be abused. It should be added that the emergence of the technologies and their deployment in the newsroom has changed the newsroom tradition and operations and compelled the reporter to the computer literate. In most cases, the reporter is expected to type, edit, and send his story directly to the sub-editor. Production. This is the final stage where the news story is fitted into the newspaper or the newscast for onward dissemination to the public. The journalistic process is a system which is followed in a procedural chain. The success of one stage depends on the success of other stages. The overall success of this process depends to a very great extent on the journalist reporter, who is expected to possess certain professional qualities. We shall discuss these qualities in the next study session. Study session summary. In this study session, you have learned that journalistic process is the various phases of activities that the reporter performs to get the news story to the public domain. First, It has to gather the information from relevant sources. Second, it has to process the information by separating facts from mere opinions and public relation information that have no significance for the mass audience. It decides the structure and format of a story before proceeding to the stage of actual writing. It should write the story to meet the deadline and satisfy the house style and peculiarities of its media organizations, and prepare its piece in a simple, clear, and communicative language, bearing in mind that its duty is to inform, not to impress. The final stage is where news stories are made available for public consumption through the appropriate mass media. The stories are published if it is print media or broadcast if it is electronic media. End of study session 2. Thanks for listening.